Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for myself. And it's such an honor for me to introduce Wang Qingshong, one of the greatest artists in China. Wang Qingshong graduated from Sichuan Academy of Fine Arts in 1993. He has lived and worked in Beijing since then, and he has more than 40 solo shows in the museum and galleries at home and abroad. He participated in Taipei Biennial, Shanghai Biennial, Sydney Biennial, and Venice Biennial, and Istanbul Biennial. In 2020, he had his solo show with new installation and around 25 works in two galleries in Beijing Tang Contemporary Art Center. And in 2019, his solo shows were held in Wuhan United Art Museum and the Museum of Photography, Seoul, Korea. And his artwork has been collected by more than 60 public art museums, including the Museum of Modern Art, Getty Museum, San Francisco Museum of Art, USA, Gallery of Modern Art, Australia, and such a lot of public art. And also as one of the chief creators, he has created the first two editions of Changjiang International Photography and Video Biennial. Now he is the artistic director for Chengdu Contemporary Image exhibition of both established and young artists from Chengdu Contemporary Image Museum, and organizing exhibitions of both established and young artists from the world. That's all. Thank you. Welcome, Wang Qingshong and also Zhang Feng. Yeah.
Thank you. 那个轻松呢，咱们就开始吧，哈。Have you ever seen this little tiny prelude, or I better?
Yeah, I shared this link to my.
Okay, to your class.
在那个唐人，就是因为疫情嘛，疫情期间就是说，就说当时北京就比较严重，然后我就觉得，1年前准备了一个展览，后他们很多人说是别做了，后来我决定还是要做。这个展览其实当时并没有请任何人，就自然开放，反正就开放了，谁来看就去看。结果没有想到就来了很多人，因为大家差不多半年没有出门，然后798那个艺术区突然一下子就来了非常非常多的人，然后比我想象的，我原来以为最多可能50个人，结果来了好几百人看这个展览的。这是2个海报。
Yeah, click here on the Field of Hope. That's the title of his solo show this year, last year, 2020 in July. And he was planning on this solo show a year before, but when the pandemic came, and he was not sure whether he should hold it, have the show or not, but the gallery insisted. And also he thinks it's a good chance for people to gather together. And on the opening day, he didn't call anyone because he thought it wasn't convenient for anyone to put a mask or go out from the comfort zone to join the public arena. And it turns out instead of a couple of dozen people showing up, there are around 100, more than 500 people showed up. So many people have been locked down in their home for more than half a year. So they all saying this is the first show they came over from their home and went on to 798. It's an art rendezvous, very important art district in Beijing. So that was the first time after half year they came over to see the gallery show here.
这个展览的主题是中国80年代很有名的一首歌，就在希望的田野上面。是当时中国刚刚改革开放，就是大家经过文革，突然发现就是整个就是改革变成了就是这种跟西方开始学习，所以说大家就很多开始唱这种很有希望的歌曲所以我因为疫情嘛，我就想应该这首歌是因为影响到我所以我就决定用这个歌曲的名字作为主题。
And this title of the show, On the Field of Hope, actually was inspired by a very popular song in the 1980s in China. 1980 was right after the Cultural Revolution when the Chinese government launched the economic reform in late 70s. So that was the lyric, that was the song that was encouraging people to look forward to the best future we are holding for. And so that's why he was inspired by the song and the lyrics. So he hopes to bring hope to the people after during the pandemic.
往下走，对。这个是1998年的作品，这个因为中国是麦当劳是92年进入中国，我94年第一次在北京那个王府井就是最重要的一条街的吃过一次麦当劳，当时是一个老师请我吃饭，吃麦当劳，我在里面吃了2个多小时，花了大概200多块钱人民币，老师请我吃饭。
So this work, Thinker, was actually inspired by a real incident he had with his teacher back in 1994. So that was the year after he graduated from Sichuan Academy of Fine Art. He moved to Beijing, and he found out Beijing was a totally different, much bigger, gigantic city than he was from, a small, tiny town. And in 1994, he was invited to this McDonald's, it's the franchise little restaurant in the most popular city, in the most popular district in Beijing. That was somehow like Times Square in Beijing. And they spent more than 200 yuan. That was around $30 US. So it's a lot of money around that time in the 1990s. They spent 2-3 hours there and spent so much money talking about art. So he was thinking that was the most significant dramatic moment for him. So that's why he made this piece in 1998. It's entitled Thinker.
这个麦当劳呢，第一天开张的时候，大概那天是有1万多个中国人去吃，连续吃了3顿，总共1万多人去到这个餐厅来吃饭。
So he's saying, according to the report, this first outlet of McDonald's opened in Beijing in the most populous district has welcomed more than 10,000 people on that opening date. So it was, it's a big hot rendezvous for many people taking their children, taking their families to enjoy this fast food. That was the first interaction between China after a decade.
而97年我第一次去国外做展览，当时去伦敦做一个画画，因为我是学油画的，画油画的个展的时候，因为我不认识英文，我到现在也不会英文，所以说我就没办法，我就去了，看到麦当劳我就进去。当然我突然发现伦敦的麦当劳很小，而且它真是快餐，它没有什么服务，也就一下子让我感觉到，我认为当年的在北京吃麦当劳的那个高档的这种西餐厅变成了一个快餐，我就觉得很多西方的这些东西进入中国来以后，然后它变成一个很奇怪的一个消费的一个现象。
He says the reason he was making this work back in 1998 was also because he had another experience when he had his first solo show, which was an oil painting show in London in 1997. That was his first trip overseas, and he wasn't reading any English and he wasn't able to speak. So he just knew there was a McDonald's nearby his his hotel. So he stepped in and he found out there are so many different strange people, putting on workers' costumes, dresses like plumbers. They are enjoying those considered a fantasy food in China back in the early 1990s, because in China all the McDonald's was converting into top-rated, maybe Michelin level restaurant. While in London, McDonald's was nothing but a franchise, outlet, fast food. So he was amazed at how the Western ideas, concepts, consumerism can be converted into something else in China.
那个千手观音千手观音那个左边这个是我1999年拍的，就是叫拿来千手观音，右边这个是我20年后又拍了一个，从这个我们可以看到。它中间的啤酒是最早是北京的一个燕京啤酒，到现在是一个拉菲的一个红酒，因为中国人很喜欢拉菲红酒、法国红酒。 我们可以看他手的变化，已经从中间的一个国旗变成联合国就是中国越来越国际化从我个人的就是说身体来看就是说20年长了40斤，也形容出中国人的一种状态。
And in this image, called on the left side, it's the requesting Buddha, and on the right hand is bequeathing Buddha. So these two pieces of photographs was created in the time lapse of 20 years. So back in 1999, he was very skinny, and he was holding all the mostly, Chinese brand stuff, the national flag, the Motorola big chunky headset, cell phone, and all those money, and it was a little bit US dollars, but most things that was there except the Coca-Cola, the can in the pedestal, that was the only thing, intervening with the West. While in the right hand side, the bequeathing Buddha, it was reshot after 20 years. He was getting fatter. He gained almost 50 pounds during the last 20 years. And he's holding a lot of stuff that comes from around the world, especially the Beijing beer in his left hand was turned into a Raphael, very very well known and popular wine in his hand, and holding many stuff in his both hands.
下一个老历练图是是根据一个中国的一个古画拍的。这幅画呢是当时唐朝，因为中国唐朝是最繁盛的一个国家，但唐朝当时反正灭亡之后呢，就很多这个唐的后代就希望重新建立一个大唐，恢复大唐，所以他就希望很多人帮他出主意，然后这幅画呢就变成了一个当时就是那种社会的这个动荡的一个时期的一幅很有名的一幅古画。然后我是2000年把这作品重新拍了。我就想2000年的时候，中国是一个经济上的一个非常复杂，然后各种复杂的一个社会的一个变迁的一个时代。我就想过去的这种政治的这种混乱跟现在的经济的这种混乱情况下，它的产生对照，看看是不是变得更好了。
Yeah, in this long panoramic photograph, he was reenacting a very well-known Tang Dynasty painting back in 800 something BC, 800s AD. That was the most, prosperous times in Chinese history. But at the end of that history, at the end of the dynasty, many officials were feeling very frustrated, even though they want to regenerate energy into their nation state, but they were powerless because the emperor wasn't trusting the officials enough. So that's why back in 2000, he reenacted the photograph and to describe the similarities between different epoch times. While, the emperor, the top leaders were never trusting, the intellectuals, the capable people to be in the dominant positions to take over, running the country. So that was his idea. That was the details. 你要讲一下你自己在
这里面有我，对，这个它是5段故事，那每个我在偷看他们在干什么。
Yeah, so in each of the episode, it's like in the original painting, it was 5 sections. So describing the different stages of how this intellectual was hosting the banquet to invite other senior level officials to come over. However, in order to avoid the suspicion from the emperor, they have to pretend themselves to be having fun, enjoying concubines, playing a lot of fun parts. But the emperor sent out a painter to sneak through the house, the mansion of this intellectual to record the painting. That was the original painting, still in the Palace Museum in China. Now, however, in Qing Song's reenactment, he put himself in. Say, for example, he was hiding behind the garbage bin, and he was enjoying he was like one of the painters in the original painting, but instead he inject himself into the image, and he's either smoking or sneaking through or making a phone call like a voyeur into this.
这张照片也是我第一次用4:5大画幅相机4:5拍的，就老历练图是第一次用大画幅拍，就是很可惜，当时就是说拍的时候，结果胶片装反了，后来又重拍的时候，其实这画面是其实没有那么完整，原来画面更完整一些，但是第一次用大画幅，所以说底片装反，然后就重拍的时候，它就出现了一个就是相对要比原来画面要少一些的，但我觉得从此以后我就开始因为是让朋友装的嘛，这个之后我就每次装底片要自己装，不敢让人装底片。
Yeah, he says when he was making this photograph, it was his first time he staged things inside the photo studio. And it was also his first time to invite models and, get the furniture, making the sets, having the light crew people over there. It was also his first time. He uses large format like 4x5. And however, the first trial was a failure because the photographer, he paid someone to come over to make the photograph, turned out to making a mistake. He inserted the singular, the films in the opposite way, so it doesn't come out correctly. And so when they rush in to make the second shot, and all these 5 screen separations were turned out into much simpler compositions, because in the original it was a lot of makeup, a lot of furniture, a lot of movements, while they have to rush in to make it done for the second time, so it makes simpler and less dramatic.
下一张对，这个过去、现在、将来其实是根据这个，我们一看这个雕塑就是很典型的社会主义的一个雕塑，它是根据那个天安门广场，就是这个雕塑去创作的。
And this work, triptych, past, present, future, were inspired by the monuments in most communist countries. For example, in this case, it's the Tiananmen, that's the Chinese Beijing Tiananmen Square. We have this historical sculptural monuments to celebrate the success of the Communist Party taking over.
这个作品主要是反映就是中国就是从那个过去的计划经济，就是社会主义的计划经济开始走向就是所谓的中国特色的社会主义，就商业化开始发展过程中的这种过去的理想，过去的这种英雄主义开始慢慢被消解啊，主要是为了表达这个。
So this triptych, past, present, and future, was a description about how the Chinese government and its society was moving towards a kind of a commercialism with Chinese typical features from a planned economy like in the 80s, 70s. And it describes how much the heroism and celebration of success in the large community achievements were diminished.
中国之家是这个照片是1.2米高12米长，这个作品。
So this work called the China Mansion, oh my goodness. Okay. This work was inspired by also what's going on in China over the last decades of economic reform. And it's as long as, I think, almost 40 feet long.
因为中国从那个开始就是2001年 IPEC 会议之后开始，中国开始申请各个的国际的这种交流，所有的国际的大会都要到中国召开。所以说我就想中国开始走向国际化，开始向国际化迈进的时候，所以说我这个作品就是说是请来了这西方的很多的这个重要的客人。其实这个所谓的重要客人，我们看到其实就是西方美术史的一些重要的一些人体的一些油画。我们可以看到它前面从那个 这个安格尔啊，到那个就是整个鲁本斯啊，包括是梦露啊，就一系列的人物，就西方重要的人物都进入在一个中国的一个家庭里面，让他们之间互相交流、互相切磋，大家产生一个很荒诞的一个大聚会。
And so this was a mistake. This work was inspired by how China invited, the Western capitalism into China by foreign direct investment, foreign corporations coming into China to make businesses there. And he just was inviting the people to come over to his house. This house he created by inviting the most well-known Western painting figures, from the angle, from Monroe, all these important, female people from the Western celebratory paintings. They were acting as the important figures to be welcomed in as honored guests to celebrate this party. So it's awkward. It looks fancy, but it's just doesn't make sense.
有人说很像个妓院的。
Yeah, a lot of Western readers take this work as a comment on the brothel. Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, let's. Okay.
这个是宿舍，宿舍是因为我们上学的时候经常会有这种几个人很多人挤在一个宿舍里面，宿舍它是产生一个各种交流、各种理想、各种就是说大家总是在这种特别欢快的一个场景。所以我就拍了这么一个宿舍这个大概166人的一个大集体宿舍。
In China, a communal gathering, a communal life is very popular. Even nowadays, there are a lot of cases. Many people have to gather and live together in one dorm. So that's why he dramatized this moment and magnified the situation, how people were probably sharing their feelings, frustrations, concepts of ideas, dreams, in the joyful moment inside one communal big dormitory. There are like 166 people in this picture.
这个盲人梦，因为我是93年到北京，我就希望就是我在北京10年以后，我希望拍一个给自己生活的一种状态，拍一张照片。所以说当时就拍了这么一个像一个盲流的一个场景的。
Oh, okay. He's saying, okay, that was the image. Okay, the dream of migrants. Okay, I have to exit, put in. The dream of migrants was his piece made in 2005 to celebrate his 10 years of living in Beijing, from moving from a small city into a big city. And so in this, 你讲吧。
这个作品呢，同时它也有我小时候一些记忆，就是各种这种，因为中国那时候小时候包括到现在这种变化拆迁呀，就是而且这个年代这个时间就是05年是中国拆迁是最速度最快的一个年，因为为了就是08年奥运会嘛，就拆了很多，所以我们可以看到这个房子它是一个中国就传统的跟前苏联的甚至还有欧洲的就是混搭的一个建筑。
And in China, what he made was this work in 2005 in big city, in particular in Beijing. There were a lot of demolitions going on, crazy bulldozer movements, because in that time, China was revamping its old structure, architecture, in order to welcome foreign guests to celebrate Olympics in 2008. And so this this composition he was shooting in a film studio in Beijing, and he set things up like a combination of the architecture style from Chinese traditional building, a former, the USSR, the former Soviet Union style, the communist style, and also some European style.
这样的，女神，女神这个作品，我们可以看的，就是很清晰的看到，就是说它是这个自由女神跟那个毛的一个服装的结合体。因为我想这个中国，因为到这个时候，其实我们的信仰越来越被这种过去的这信仰越来越被年轻人就被瓦解掉。但是他这种信仰又是一个就是相对的很复杂，也很就是说让人感觉到不知道该怎么办。所以我们可以看这两种结合的，它既像一个建设的一个场景，同时也像一个即将被拆除的一个场景。它是一个这么一个复杂的一个对信仰这么复杂的一个阶段的一个作品。
This work called Goddess was created in 2011. That was almost Chinese economic reform undergoing like 40 years. So he was thinking to create a portrait of Mao in combination with the Statue of Liberty. So it's Mao and the Statue of Liberty's head. And he is saying after 20, 30, 40 years, and a lot of people have lost belief, lost faith in anything in communism, in political struggle, whatever. And young people would rather to choose a different road to embark on. They are forgetful about the history, and they were getting lost. And so in this picture, you find out it can be interpreted in two ways. Either it's a construction of a belief, say a combination of the China and the US idealistic belief, or it's a deconstruction of those two beliefs. Okay.
下一个。
不讲了。
佛堂那个也是对，包括刚才那个佛堂是中国的跟西方的一个结合的，跟那个差不多意思吧。因为这个但是我们可以看到这个弥勒佛，他那么多崇拜者，其实他是一个可能笑大家这么去崇拜他，他是一个这个墙面上是整个西方的各种神。对。
Hold on. Am I sharing? You share. Are you able to see my share?
Yeah, but we didn't see you.
Hold on. Okay. Right now, are you able to see the temple?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes the computer doesn't work. And in this image, it's called Temple. He built this in his own studio. And it's like the former picture, the goddess. The temple image also describes a sense of absurdity. A lot of people right now have lost belief, and they don't care about what matters. And even though they might go to the temple to pray and to give honoring offerings whatsoever. So this is how he is making a gigantic golden Buddha, happy Buddha there, and looking down on these so-called believers and making fun of them.
这个当时搭了一个就是8米高的一个弥勒佛，参加的人数模特是250人，250其实在中国就是个傻子的意思，这数字就是一个傻子的意思。
So this, as he said, he made this installation in his own studio, and this Buddha was almost like as high as 8 meters, and there are like a group of 250 models. And in Chinese figure, 250 represents a group of dummy, stupid people.
下一个对。这个世界的雪， 这个作品当时是想拍一个战争的场面，但是就比较可惜，他这个作品最后因为别的原因，因为有人举报说我这拍那个黄色的，然后被没收了这个作品。所以我是留下了一个局部的一个我现场拍摄的一个场景的。
Actually, this was his ever largest construction of his photo film set. It was done in like almost 10,000 square meters. That was like 100,000 square feet. Huge space, and but because some movie extras reported to the police, and this negative was taken by the government. So actually, this what you are seeing here was only one of the section of that photo shoot.
所以这个场景搭了130米，现在展出来的可能也就是差不多一半的这个场景嘛，就只有对留下了。当时拍了一个工作照，只留下了一半的，对。
So the set you are seeing here is just maybe maximum 1/2 of the construction, and the real set is as long as 130 meters. So yeah, that was how many feet? Almost 400 feet. Yeah, so this is only a working photo that he is making here.
下，是不是时间快到了
？Let's see， 还行，半个小时，还有15 minutes。
这个血衣是在那个底特律拍的，底特律的一个被破产的一个工厂的外场拍的。
This blood-stained shirt was a collaboration between the community people and the U of M faculty and students back in 2018. The site here was a former factory, the Sandy confectionery factory that produces fudges, chocolates, cookie stuff. So it went bankrupt. So he found this location.
它是就讲述一个就是中国制造跟美国制造的一个关系的一个就是这么一件作品的。因为底特律是原来是美国一个很重要的一个美国制造的一个基地，所以底特律的这个各工厂的这种破产，包括中国这种制造特别繁荣，也面临着就很多的企业的倒闭，所以说我就想拿这个两个之间的这种关系拍了这件作品。
And so this work talks a lot about the concept made in the USA and made in China. Detroit, as everyone knows, is representing the industrialization in the US. It's the base of its many industries, especially the auto industry. And however, during the last decade, went downwards, right, go bankrupt. And he's envisioning probably in some decades later, a lot of booming business in China might possibly also face bankruptcy. So this is a comparison and contrast.
下个。这个跟我学作品是这个作品其实是在中国80年代，就是中国刚刚开始改革开放文革结束以后，曾经有个英文栏目叫跟我学这个节目。这个节目在中国最重要的一个新闻的前段，让中国人学英语，大概学了是12年。这个教材是当时跟我学的教材是唯一一个超过毛选的一个教材，而且我也在其中之内想学，但是到现在也没学会英语，所以我就拍了这么一个跟我学一个这个作品。
Follow Me. The title of this work comes from a English learning program that was launched by the Chinese Central Television back in 80s. It was a propagation about how the government wants to speak, let its citizens to learn to speak English. And it was a very popular TV program in the 80s. It ran for almost 12 years, and a lot of people went to learn the English. He was one of them, but he was never able to speak English. And however, this book, the textbook, was very much well sold, as much even more welcomed than the Chairman Mao's quotation, The Little Red Book.
这个黑板上写了，就是说大概我准备了5年的时间，就这5年有些什么关键词儿。所以这堂课我们看到这堂课其实是一个相互逻辑是非常矛盾的、混乱的，但是又是好像是积极向上的一堂课。所以这堂课是一个乱七八糟的一堂课，其实是一个。
So you can see the title of this class. It's Let China Walks Towards the World, Let the World Learns About China. And there are a lot of keywords he collected over the last 5 years from all sort of news media, textbooks, TV shows, and he put all of them up there. And on the surface, it was like a very active, promotional, idealistic class, lesson to give students inspiration. However, if you read out those Chinese and English, the words and sentences, you will find out it doesn't make sense. It's very much chaotic and conflictual. So that's the lesson he thinks he wants to deliver to the audience.
他这堂课的名字叫“让中国走向世界，让世界了解中国”。
我说了。
这个就叫拍了《跟我学》之后，到差不多8年后，我就拍了《跟他学》。我想你我他是世界，就拍了《跟他学》。这个《跟他学》呢，我是在那个就在那个废品收购站别人扔掉的一些书，我把它买回来20吨的书，我放在我的工作室放了大概1年时间，让它很脏很旧，然后拍了这个跟他学。
Okay, yeah, these were called Follow Him. He collected more than 20 tons of used secondhand books and built it into a big library. And he let these he let these books and the house stay in the dust for more than a year, so it can collect the dust and dirt. And then he took it. He photographed it.
下一张。跟你学是讲述中国高考，因为这些同学为了学习高考的一个场景。因为中国高考是一个特别疯狂的一个现象。反正中间我那个是就打了点滴，也要拼命要考上大学，这么一个场景。也是在工作室拍的。
So after Follow Me, Follow Him, he made this Follow You after 10 years. So in this work, he also created the sets in his own studio. He asked the carpenter to make the tables and chairs. He put out all those posters talking about education in China. And this set was a description about how crazy, how ridiculous the Chinese system of getting kids into rigorous tests to apply into colleges. And he was one of them. He was putting on fake hair, like a white hair with a white beard, but with ivy next to him. He was one of the students. After many years trying out, he still failed. But he's still insisting, sustaining there.
下一张。
这个还说吗？
不说，
时间不太，
时间来不及了。
对。
大摆战场，我们可以看到这个，大摆战没了。
大摆战场。
那就讲这个呗。同一世界，同一梦想，我们可以看到，它像一个那个金字塔一样的，左边呢是世界500强的 logo， 这右边是大学，他们两个是相互的一种关系，就是上了大学可能是为了这个更好的生存，或者是商业化、市场化，他们两个之间的这种关系，当时就拍了这么一件作品。而且这个大学可以随便改的，因为展览期间这个大学不停地改，每个人可以把自己希望大学再改动。
And actually, this work, One World, One Dream, was also created during that time period when a lot of foreign enterprises are coming to China and making booming businesses, and all the Chinese education is oriented towards going forward with high brand, best prestige. You know, on the left-hand side, it's all the important Fortune, you know, best celebrity businesses, companies, you know, that makes a lot of money on the records. And on the right-hand side, it's an installation, actually. He invited everyone who comes over to the exhibition place to write down their university, their colleges. So the right-hand side image was always constantly changing with different new additions of college names. So in China, there is a phrase saying, if you read a lot of books, say tens of thousands books, you are definitely become intellectual. By becoming intellectual, you will have a very stable, fortunate life. So he creates these two letters in the imagery, like a pyramid. So that goes to the tip of them, you know, the top letter, and you are well off there. So yeah, this is the detail. Okay.
这个是疫情期间，因为20年疫情期间就是新冠，我也出不了门，后来就说也没什么事干，我就开始手绘了一些广告，后来写着写着，一发现这疫情好像不是1分钟2分钟就能解决的，所以说突然发现写了1个星期不行，我就一直写，这个大概写了4个月，花了4个月时间，大概上千个广告，最后把它做了在一个8米高的一个墙上，贴在墙上面，板上贴在板上，然后打了一个问号，就对这个我们可以看到问号这个圈里面其实是思想者。
Yeah. So this word question brick wall was a creation he made during the pandemic because he was bored. He hadn't anything to do, and he started to paint those posters. So that was a tiny piece of paper he paints, and he painted over the 4 months. He painted more than thousands of advertisements, and then he put them onto different shapes of boards and placed them next to each other and on top of each other, and then he set up a wall, and then he is standing on the dots of the question mark. You know, you can see him, you know, sitting on a urine, right, on the dot of the question mark there, and then you see all these hand descriptive painted advertisements. 这个不用看。Yeah, this is documentary. You can find out in. 这个还看吗？
你随便放下来就快一点。
这
是一个拍作品的一个现场。就是在唐人展览的时候，就是个展的一个记录的一个。
So this is the work his last piece on the field of hope.
然后在展场上面，我是把自己的头像。
So you can see how he works on this portraits of himself, and he made these portraits, 500 portraits of them, inviting different people street, and that's the setting. Right.
展览的时候，我把自己的肖像放了一个。
Yeah, he's working on the blueprints, and there's the stencils, you know, easels by the big trucks. They move over to the wild field. Nobody can, you know, during the pandemic, you can not have the people inside the photo shoot.
在展览的时候，大概有画了大概总共画了有1000多张。对着我的肖像去画。
差不多了时间。
它其实这个重要是反映了中国就把这种一个很不重要
Yeah,
的
that's the
树立成一个
finished
榜样。
image. He's standing in between all these portraits. 哦，那就 OK。
对，时间到了是吧？
那就没了吧。
可以再讲点，没关系的，就是如果
OK， 那就没了，请松是吧？
就是说其实我做作品，因为我一直
听得见吗？
听见。我一直强调就是说你看这是我给我自己做的广告，王劲松作品，对，一个现场的一个广告，对。
Yeah, and this work was he made out for himself, advertisement celebrating his website, his art making. You know, he did a photo shoot in a film studio. 那就
因为我
差不多。
一直强调我是一个记者，以记者的方式是来反映中国这个整个社会的这种变化。
And he considered himself as a photojournalist. So he's like using his camera to tell people what has been going on inside China and the world.
因为时间太紧了，我肯定还只能说这些。对。
Yeah, we can't talk much, but yeah, if you have any questions, you are most welcome to ask.
That was a great talk, and thank you so much. I guess I'll begin by asking, tell us about the process of conceiving your images, and then bring us through how you make them in terms of pre-production, and then also the printing aspect of making the final prints. Thank you.
Are you, Professor Krusen, are you asking him the question, or are you asking him how he made the pre-production?
How he conceives of his images and then brings them to life.
OK， 他就想问你，你最初想这作品时候，这个阶段前期是怎么预备准备，然后你后来又怎么创作，把它实现，然后你又怎么打印这个过程，你能讲一下？
一般情况下，就是说我会在社会中去观察，我觉得哪些东西很有意思，而且也跟自己有些产生了一些关系，这时我就会想，就是可能这个作品会要拍了。但是要拍的时候，我会准备比较长时间去查这些跟着相关的相似这种类型的这种问题啊，它这些有什么关联？这个是不是一个普遍的现象？如果我觉得确实说值得我去关注的时候，这时候我就肯定拍，就会先准备一些道具啊，准备道具后，然后会找一个自己在工作，有时候会租一个大的一个电影的棚。或者在自己的工作室去拍，一般通常会花大概1个月时间左右去准备道具的。
Usually he would wander around in big cities or in his hometown or in any city he visits. He will go to the town, go to the cities to intermingle with the local community people there to get a sense of what is going on in that community. And then he might find out something typical weird or typical popular in that location. If he thinks that situation is deserving his attention, he will dig deeper into that scenario and do more research, and he will search a lot into the contemporary life, into the history, into the previous imageries people have created, and then he would find out how can he link to his personal concept, and then develop the idea in his own description. And then he starts out the real preparation. He would prepare a lot of props and buy or create or design and getting other people to make it. And of course, at the final stage, he would either rent a film studio or photo studio or use his own photo studio to prepare for the setting. So usually, usually the construction of the site might take about a month.
现在一般是就12×20的底片，我通常会用电影灯，因为电影灯它比较稳定，可能是大概一般比方像拍一个比较大的场面的时候，会租2辆发电车为这个整个提供。通常情况下可能是32千瓦的灯，大概是5个灯，然后会有20多个就是24千瓦的，还有一个像6千瓦的灯，大概一般是200多千瓦的发电车吧，大概。
He says on the real site to do the photo shoot, he will have around a dozen of assistants, and he works now mostly with 12x20 large format camera, and he would have to invite a team of lighting crew to stabilize the sets of the lights. And he has to pay 2 trucks to generate the power, the power generators. He needs maybe at least 5 big lights of 32 kilowatts, and some maybe a dozen of 24 kilowatts, and some of them at 6 kilowatts. So the power generator that car carries has to be at maximum like more than 200 kilowatts.
作品尺寸通常是1.8×3米，大部分尺寸是1.8×30公分，然后 C 喷的这 Lambda 机子出了 C 喷的，我不太用那个就是微喷艺术微喷的这个Epson不用这个，对，一直用那个C 喷的出片子。
And for the turnout of the photograph, most of his large format, single imagery should be as large as 180 × 300 centimeters. How much is in feet? 180 × 300 centimeters. So I don't know. And then it's he printed them out through Lambda printer. It's a C print. He doesn't like to use the inkjet of Epson, whatever.
So that's 12x20-inch
film. Yeah, single sheets. Yeah, film camera.
Any other questions?
Oh, do we have questions in the chat? Question: What keeps you hopeful about the future? 你对未来，你怎么样对未来充满理想？什么东西能使你充满理想呀？
因为我觉得中国这种变化是一种无常的变化，我们看到了这种很多每天的这种欣欣向荣的，比如说在中国最高峰的时候，它会世界上10个摩天大楼就6个会到了中国，我们总会觉得中国会非常好非常好。我们在过去，我们小时候就是感应超美，这考到现在还是感应超美，我就觉得，但是其实我们同时也是觉得这种相对的。从我内心中又相对一种灰暗，所以我的作品，我印照片子，我通常都让它降30%的饱和度。我觉得社会就是这种降了饱和的一个，它不是那么艳丽。虽然我们看到好像是很欣欣向荣，但其实我们这还是降了30%饱和至少。
He says actually there are many dramas happening every day in China. And this country has been challenged a lot on many different terms and ideas and realities. And on the surface, China is very prosperous. Every day you always can see ongoing new changes. For example, in the whole world, there are the 10 largest, highest, tallest skyscrapers. Definitely, there will be 6, more than half of them will happen or be built in China. And so it's always like in Chinese dreams and ideology that China will surpass the US, it will take over the leading position more than the Great Britain, more than Germany whatsoever. And so it's always looking into the future with hope, with high expectations. But however, he deep in his mind, sometimes he knows there is darkness, there is not much hope. However, he does want to bring hope, on the surface, even though it's superficial, splendor. He wants to bring that hope to the people. When he presents and prints a photograph, he will intentionally tone down the saturation by like 30%, from too much color into a little bit grayish, dark scenario, so that people can still feel his sentiment, his deep mood towards the realities. 还有一个同学问你 Do you face challenges to get people to participate for？ 就是人们为你工作的时候，一起合作拍摄影的时候，你有没有碰到过很多挑战？
最大的挑战就是怕人举报，因为经常你会找一些群众演员啊。会举报，因为在中国过去是200个人以上你就必须要申报，其实申报是肯定不成功的，一定是不成功。后来变成了50人必须要申报，但是我觉得申报是不可能的，所以最怕就是其实反而是举报，因为做作品倒还是简单，因为中国就人还是比较多嘛，很多人，这所有的破烂也多。很多道具都很容易找，但是唯一就怕举报，因为经常有人会举报我的作品有问题的。
And the most risky challenge he is concerned about during the shoot or before the shoot is how to make the photo shoot go smoothly. But it turns out in many occasions he was so scared that some of the movie extras he paid out to work with him as models in the photo work. And they might just pick up their cell phone and report to the police. And, in China, it usually happens decade ago. You have to make a claim. You have to apply for permit to get a photo shoot if there are a crowd of 200 people. And now they ask you to apply for a permit if you have only more than 50 people. But even with these 50 people, you wouldn't get the permit, you will be reported in some dramatic scenarios. So that was the highest risky challenge he has to face each time he does the photo shoot.
通常我解决的问题，比方说我最多的是1400人，我就会分成多少个200或者多少个50个人的叫一个人说你给我找50个人，你找人就每个只找50个人，这样我就多找点，因为1400人是很麻烦的，对，所以说有时候会最大的挑战就是尽量的去让他们就是找一个地方就是比较屏蔽的，他手机不太容易收到信号的地方去拍，会把它关起来，屏蔽的。
And so to deal with that drama of being reported to the police, he has to ask different people to crowd together. Say, for example, he will ask one movie extra agent to get him 50 people. Some other agents get other 50. And so he can use different transportation to move these people into one location. And in total, he can get 200 or 1,400. That's the maximum he worked with. And also he wants to use some kind of technique to avoid people being connected to internet. There was some gadgets, right, in China that it's technique that makes the signal, you lose the signals. There's no connection to Wi-Fi, so people cannot report. So those are the two strategies he created.
Was that why his negative of that one picture was confiscated? And did he ever get the negatives back, or?
那个05年那个是不是就是因为这种被举报给拿走了？
对，被举报成功了。对，我当时以为没太注意，其实已经拍完了，他们就举报了，这样子人家过来了。但是我没想到就是那么严重，对。
Yeah, that was 2005 when he was really into a lot of crazy art making, and was it was happens, you know, the BBC came over to shoot the Genius Photography, maybe that was a photo documentary about the history, and then the BBC people were coming over, and who knows who reported to the police? It must be one of the movie extras. And when the police investigated, and the photo shoot was done already, and but he has to report to what he has been doing and what's the result, and in that way they confiscated the negative. And they don't mean he was doing something wrong, but when it was reported that somebody was saying he was paid, he was sponsored by some foreign businesses to make a porno film. So that resulted in the confiscation. It wasn't the material, it wasn't the idea he created in the photograph. It's talking about the blood, right? The bloodshed of the, you know, the tremendous, you know, wars that brings disaster to human being. That wasn't the idea reported. That was the porno, you know, film. Oh. 他说有一个 there are so many questions, I can only pick some of the latest one. 下面他说有一个，你觉得就是80年代中国的艺术自由和当今比有什么样的区别呢
？80年代的时候，管得很严，但是它会有个缝隙，有个非常小的缝隙，你可以进来。现在缝隙越来越小，越来越小。我觉得，80年代应该是最自由的，到90年代都还可以。其实现在大家就慢慢觉得啊，我们每个人都觉得啊，这个不能拍，那个不能拍，其实就自我审查，开始自我审查，然后就变成了越来越无趣。现在，
Actually, back in 1980s, even the 1990s, that was the most free. That was the best times for the artist. You know, the artistic freedom was tremendous in 80s and 90s. Even though there were some, you know, difficulties, but still there were always these cracks. You know, the artist can make cracks or avoid stepping into these dangerous traps. But nowadays, you know, stepping into 220, it's like the current situation was more risky and unpredictable, because many artists are self-censoring themselves. So you can't make that, she can't make that, you know, nobody can make anything. So it's like self-censorship, make it even impossible to make anything provocative or interesting.
现在很多艺术就越来越偏向设计，越来越完美漂亮，是一个我们经常说是一个无害的艺术，很好挂架的，很漂亮而已。
And right now, he thinks artists are, I mean, overall, Chinese artists are creating. Okay, hold on. Many artists are creating very beautiful imageries and in Photoshop or creative design. And so we would say these contemporary Chinese artworks in the current times are more harmless, you know, but not interesting or loaded with extra ideas. You know, it's simply beautiful and idealistic and harmless. Okay, the question. Okay, we have another question. In your eyes, what are the differences between the actors, actresses, and the props exist in your work? 他说，这个是在你眼里，就是这个演员和你的道具是什么样的，有区别没有？
我觉得没有特别大的区别。其实我虽然我们看到我拍的人非常多，但是我经常说我的所有的作品里面，我可以把人去掉，就是我的场景搭完之后，其实我因为在中国你必须要保证这点，所以我经常会我把这个场景搭完之后，我觉得有可能我一个人都进不来，因为一举报我一个人进不来，我会拍空镜，哪怕没有一个人，我必须这作品还是有意思的。我才可能放人，所以人跟道具是一样的，但是同时呢，人也可以对这个作品产生一个补充作用，因为人是在中国，因为是世界人口最多的，而且是充满欲望，我希望人的参与，但是同时我也希望，没有人的时候，我这个作品能成立，因为经常有可能会没有人。
To answer the question about the difference between the actors and actresses and props, his answer is because the situation in China is getting tougher, and he has to avoid being reported to the police. So in most occasions when he create a set, create a scenario and get the people there, he has to be prepared. What if, the actors and actor cannot come, or they were prevented from coming, or he failed to get them into the photo shoot? What can he do? And then he can still take a shoot about the scenes, the scenario only, without participation of the people. So if the second choice also makes sense, by itself stands up, and he says it's a perfect idea and a perfect shoot. So he doesn't mind taking a photo shoot about only the scenarios without the human beings, because it's idealistic if he can have the large group of people coming over to participate, because in China, population is an advantage, right? And the people's desire and the actual desires does add another layer of dimension. However, if he cannot have the people there, if taking a photo shoot only of the empty scene, that he's satisfied, and that will be okay. 好，还有一个有一个同学问了2遍说 How does he see his work in relation to other Chinese artists？ 就你看你的作品跟其他中国艺术家是怎么一个关系？
我觉得我可能跟你的生活经历有关系，就是我更希望我的作品它不是艺术，我更希望我的作品是一个社会插图。因为很多因为在中国这个尤其摄影在中国这个处境下，我觉得更多的是应该是怎么记录这个一个非常复杂的非常魔幻的，然后也非常多变的。我想所以说我经常就想我最好是像个记者一样的去观察这个社会，我不太想做特别形式的这种纯艺术的这种状态，所以我的作品的名称也是非常看图识字，非常简单，一看大家都知道这个名字是要说什么的。
To answer the question about how he sees his own work in conjunction with the rest of other Chinese artists, he answers, he hopes his art describe his own personal life, his lived experience in China. And he doesn't want his artwork to be pure artistic or considered as a well celebrated artwork. He thinks his work will make more sense to be used as a illustration in describing the society, the nation, the world, when they come to understand what China is going in these years. And because China has been so dramatically undergoing changes, and there are a lot of myths and a lot of changes, and he wants his work to be a photojournalist type of recording the social realities. So to understand his work, you don't need much sense or to know about China, but you do need to understand the title of the work. The title of the work sometimes give a lot of hints into the meaning of the work. 还有一个问题 Have you ever thought about create? OK. 哎呀，他说的是3点半，刚才好像那个老师。对。
OK.
我看啊 There's another question. Have you ever thought about creating a set outside China? 就有一个学生问你，你想没想过在中国之外的地方做作品？
我其实在试过几次，比如我去在英国、法国曾经拍过大概有几张，可能这次没有拿出来的作品，因为时间有限。我曾经大概有1年到2年，我曾经拍了几张，就没有一个中国人面孔的一些作品。当然我想证明，就是说，假设就是说我这个作品中没有一个中国人的甚至亚洲的面孔的时候，人们还能不能认出来是我作品？OK， 我证实了，很多人说，哎，好像还是庆松的作品。那我觉得。我只是尝试一下子，所以我就基本就不太拍了。当然在那个底特律也拍过，其实下面还想拍那个底特律那个美术馆里面，也一直想谈那个跟他们的这个，他明年90周年嘛， 想拍他那个跟他那个产生一个互动的一件作品，就是那个叫那个墨西哥那个壁画那个画家。
对，And actually, over the years, to answer your question about have you ever thought about taking photo shoots in outside China, and he says actually he has made a couple photographs taking overseas, for example in UK in a northern stage, and in France. And in Italy, he has made a couple of photo works, but because of the time constraint, he hasn't been putting those works here. And he has been thinking how to identify his photo work. He has to make sure people still can identify his work, even though he doesn't have the Chinese faces into his works. So that's why when he did the photo shoot in overseas, he doesn't ask for anyone from Asia, no Asian faces, just the Western, European face or other foreigner faces. If people can still identify that's Wang Qingsong's work, that's okay. But he tried out, so he's happy. And actually, in this presentation, he showed you one photo work, right? He did with Detroiters, right? The Detroit community people. And back in 2018. Right now in his mind, he's talking with DIA, the Detroit Institute of Arts, to create a photo mural in connection, being inspired by the Diego Rivera's, the industrial mural. That was in the court, in the garden court, the mural by Diego Rivera, the Mexican mural artist, and he's inspired that. And then he's talking now with the DIA to make a future photo shoot to celebrate the 90th anniversary of this mural being created back in 1933. Okay. Oh, take a last question. I don't know. Oh, one question is any reflections of the art education art schools in China? Does he teach or is that an impossibility? 他说你在中国有没有在艺术学院教书？是不是也不可能像你这样人教书？你对那个中国教育、艺术教育的反思？
事实上我不能正式的去教他们，我只是就是课座的。这种偶尔会去，或者是说，因为我的课程是不能进入教材的，不能进入他教学大纲的，所以也只是一个课外，其实相当于聊天的一个偶尔去在这种学校里面去讲，对。
He has been invited a lot of times to give talks to the art students in many art museums and art schools. However, he cannot be formally introduced and invited to work with art universities and art schools because his artworks probably will be censored and his artworks has never been entered into any formal syllabus, official art school syllabus. But he can be invited as a guest curator or guest artist, residents, whatever, to give talks and chat, opening chat, that's possible.
曾经也有大学希望我就说招一个班，像实验班一样，从1年级到4年级我来带这个班，但是好像都成功不了，因为一到了高层以后，就害怕，怎么说，不行，所以我就放弃了，对啊，现在基本不抱希望了，对。
He said years ago, some art schools, probably very high-level art academies, wanted to invite Wang Qingsong to be a supervisor or a teacher to give education art school in the school from the freshmen up till seniors. He can create a group of students, just follow and learn with him. And within his studio, whatever, in the art school. But it turns out when the application came over to the super high level, to the administrations, they have to turn down that proposal because, they don't like that. Oh, the last question.
Yeah, we'll have one last question.
Yeah, okay.
You wanna...
Yeah, I can ask him one last question. 最后一个问题啊，就是问你最尊敬的、最仰慕的艺术家。 Who are the artists you respect and admire?
就是艺术家嘛，还是摄影？
对，艺术家 artists。
如果艺术家，我肯定是杜尚，我觉得他是一个很颠覆性的，对。一个。要摄影家，我喜欢的相对多一点，对啊，包括教授的作品我也很喜欢。中国有很多你的画册卖，对。
And if we are talking about artists, he thinks Marcel Duchamp is the artist he respects and highly admire, because Duchamp turns down a new chapter of the art history. You know, he toppled all the previous art concepts. But if we talk about the photographer, there are multiple, brilliant artists. And the professor here, Grigor Krusen, is one of them. And Professor Krusen, you wouldn't know that in China, there are a lot of catalogs, a lot of publications that include your artworks. You are very well known in China.
Thank you. We have one last, we always end with one last question, and that is, can he please give our students a word of advice or wisdom to the student artists?
OK， 他说能不能给他们的学生一个忠告，一个建议吧？最后一个问题。
这个对年轻的摄影家，我觉得最重要的是一定要去就是讲自己的事儿，不要去听别人说啊，这个事要拍我就拍这个，那个有什么我就拍这个，也不要去相信别人，相信自己。还有一个就是说，如果是作为学生，我认为，如果是你家里很有钱，那你肯定用钱。多用点钱去做一些作品。如果你要是没有钱，你就多花时间，因为在这个时代，时间是最好的金钱。你多花点时间去想作品，我想他的作品也一样是这样的。但我更建议年轻的这个学生应该更花时间去思考啊，然后再创作，这个时候可能会更有魅力吧，我想。
He says for young artists, he has only one advice. That is, you have to tell your own story. You have to generate your own stories to tell to the people, and don't trust any other people's giving you the best idea to make the best success, whatever. You have to trust your own intuition. And he says, if you come from a well-off family, definitely, having money is an advantage. But if you don't have money, as a young person, you have lots of time, right? So in Chinese idiom, we say time is money. So if you can contribute as much time as possible to making the work, that means you are using a lot of your money into making that work. So that means if you think a lot and prepare a lot for what you think inspired to make, you definitely will go to the best success.
Well, that's beautiful advice, and I want to thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for translating.
Thank you.
A heroic job, and thank you, Runway, for organizing as well. It's really
Thank you. Yes, thank you for all of us, all of you coming. Oh yeah.
也希望我还奏说一句，也希望未来就说耶鲁的学生包括老师能够来到中国参加展览，我相信很多中国人会喜欢耶鲁大学的摄影系的学生的作品或者老师的作品。欢迎大家能来中国展览。
Yeah, also.
我也在这个影像馆工作。
Yeah, Qingsong, he has been working over the last 10 years as a chief curator for photo and biennial stuff in China. And he's now the artistic director for a private but big, important photo museum. And they do a lot of important Western and Chinese young promising artists. So definitely he would like to keep in touch with you guys, and in the future he would like to welcome the professor here and the teachers, faculty, and other students to be participating in his shows inside China.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.